We'll try this again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay. As you know, I like to start out with a joke. And this lady was driving down the road, and she, you know how two lanes merge into one as you're going down the road. And she was going. She was in a rush, and she was kind of. She was. The traffic was getting to be heavy when they were merging over, and she couldn't get in front of this one old gentleman, and so she got behind him, and he was going super slow, and she was just, getting more and more aggravated, so she started leaning on the horn a little bit, and then they came to a stop sign, and, he was still slow, and the light turned green, and he slowly went forward, and she was just still on the horn, and she started rolling down the window, cussing him out and everything, and then after it went back to two lanes, she sped up and passed him. And then here in a second, she saw some red lights in the back in her rearview mirror. And police officer pulled her over, and she said, "Well, what was I doing?" Because she wasn't speeding. She said, "Well, what was I doing?" He said, "Well, he said, get out of the car and lean against the car." And so he cuffed her and put her in the back of the patrol car and took her down to jail. And so he about an hour later, he let her out and was apologetic and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. You can go ahead and go. You didn't break any laws." And she goes, "Well, why did you arrest me?" And he said, "Well, I saw on your car how it said Jesus loves me and follow me to church, follow me to Sunday school and all this stuff. And I saw you cussing and everything and honking on your horn to this guy, and I thought for sure that someone had stole your car."
Good one.
It's called instant karma.
Today's title of the lesson is Ordinary Life, and I titled it that specifically because it's kind of a lead into what I'm going to talk about. But you are not meant to live an ordinary life. We know people in our life where they're just kind of drudging along every day, and we sometimes maybe get into that mode where we're just drudging along and just making it as we just surviving essentially, no matter what that means to us, whether we're at what socioeconomic area we're at. But we're not meant to just sludge along and go along in life. Your gifts in life are uniquely yours, and saying that means that God has given you some gifts that you really are intended to share with people. And as we know, there are so many people in the world that you haven't met and that you will come into contact with. And if we're not sharing those gifts all along, then we are essentially not fulfilling our purpose here. And we can get into that drudgery and thinking that, this life isn't that great and everything. This is where I think church and everything, especially the Christian church, gets into a little bit of problems, is because, in my opinion, Christianity has been kind of hijacked. I mean, Jesus didn't teach about the getting saved and then you're going to go to heaven later. Jesus taught about heaven being here now on earth. And so when you separate those two and you're starting to say my reward, my enjoyment is going to be later, then you don't have too much impetus for what you're going to do in this life. If that later means that you're going to be dead before you reach it, right?
Right.
So the idea of Christianity, I think that's why Unity every once in a while gets into that debate whether are we Christian or not, is because it depends on what Christianity by the majority of people is being defined as. One of my good friends is James Gather, and he's been a Unity minister forever. He's quite a bit, he's a senior minister. He hadn't got a church anymore, but anyway, he wrote something the other day in the ministers' discussion group about, if you ask me if I'm Christian, it depends on what you're qualifying Christianity as. He said, "If I believe in Jesus' teachings that these and better and greater things you can do? Yes. Do I believe Jesus had taught us how to heal each other and ourselves? Yes." And so he went on to this litany of yes, yes, yes. But then he went to, if you ask me about the Christianity, if I'm Christian, and you say that have you been saved by Jesus Christ, then I would have to say No, because the inference on that is that once you're saved, you're always saved, and you don't have to, but life keeps going on. And when we are sharing our gifts, our God-given gifts with everybody, we are going to grow in that understanding. And that understanding is our spirituality. So if you are stagnant, no matter what part of it is in our spirituality, then we're not living the extraordinary life, we're living an ordinary life. And we aren't meant to live an ordinary life. Goals in your life are attained and to be celebrated. And we're doing that right now as a church, aren't we?
Yep.
We celebrated getting the 15 acres,
Yeah.
and because we thought that's where we were going to be. Yet we grew to a point, no matter, we're kind of forced sometimes, sometimes we're forced into things. And if we're paying attention, then we'll recognize, and I'm still not at a conclusion that we're forced to go somewhere else. I think that we're, as far as on this property and everything, what I'm saying is I think that we find an opportunity, then don't let that opportunity pass you by just because everything's not going good for you. Go ahead and take advantage of that opportunity, and we have as far as the church. But the same thing goes on with our own life. We have to be aware. We may have goals, and when we reach them, I hope that we celebrate them because, I don't know if it's because of my raising in unity or it probably has, well, obviously it had something to do with it, but I'm sure it had to do with other factors. But I wasn't very good about celebrating accomplishments. What I would do, and many people do, is we're getting close to achieving a goal. Looks like we're going to achieve that goal, so we set another one. And we don't take a moment to smell the roses, whatever you call it, to celebrate the achievements that we made. And that's kind of, when we do that, what we're doing is disavowing the goal, the reaching of the goal. And we need to be able to celebrate those things that we achieve. And so we'll celebrate this and know that it's going to be our next best step as a church going to that new church, and celebrate all goals in our individual life also, because there are many of them. I don't know if I know you know some people that have retired, and I don't know anybody that has retired that figures out how they ever worked. In other words, they have so many things going on after they've retired. How did they ever find the time to work?
Exactly.
So what that tells us, too, is that if we're paying attention, then there is plenty for us to grow in. And that also is with our spirituality. That's why we need to celebrate our goals, but also know that we're going to go to something higher. Life does not end after we reach our dream idea of life from a younger age. I don't know about you, but I'm sure you did. Depends on actually your status again. I mean, if you're born to a silver spoon, then maybe you don't have goals of what you would like life to be like when you become whatever of an age. But when I was young, when we were raised, and we were raised in a very loving family, yet we didn't have any money, any extra money. Let me put it that way. So what do you do in those situations? You learn to enjoy what you've got.
Exactly.
And so, well, you can or you don't, I guess.
That's right.
And if you don't, then you're talking about the ordinary lives. I'm just going to sludge along and get along, and you'd be amazed how many people I've been starting to talk to, because I've been doing a little bit of reach out lately, and with that new building and the people around, and how many people are that way, or just saying, well, this is. I've dreamt of owning a house, whatever it is, owning a house, and I've got that, so I've made it, and they're 30 years old.
Yeah.
Well, come on, there's a lot of life left to live.
Exactly.
And so our idea, our vision of life has to be one of let's enjoy what we have now. We've blessed this place even, haven't we?
Yeah.
Let's enjoy what we have now and continue to grow better. So let's go. So even at this, when I think I've told you, I know I've told you the story before. As far as when I was growing up, one of the biggest things I thought, well, I know that when I have a business, if I make it, I'll know when I made it when I have a cell phone. And of course now everybody has cell phones.
Right.
But when back then, the first cell phone I had was a bag phone. It was big. It was probably this big. The phone wasn't that big, but it was big too.
Right.
It was probably 4 or 5 times what our cell phones
Yeah.
are now. And you just pull that out and you act like Mr. Big Shot.
Yeah.
You'd have a big old bag hanging on you. It was something else. So obviously though, if I would have stopped at that, what would I have? Just an old piece of equipment and nothing, right? And those things were not free. They were expensive.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have to remind ourselves that we need to change as times change too. Not we need to change with them, but we need to know that it's an opportunity for us to grow in our understanding of life. We never reach nirvana, though, unless we recognize where it is. And if you ask yourself that question, where nirvana is, you may come up with different answers at different times. You ask yourself that question. Because a lot of people in Christianity would say, where's nirvana? And they may say heaven, if they're thinking, from a church viewpoint. Heaven's nirvana. Well, okay, it can be. It will be. But where, then you might ask them where heaven is, and that'll get you in a lot of trouble probably. But heaven is where you place it. I mean, there are many parts of the Bible, if somebody wants to argue that we can demonstrate that. But you don't want to get in an argument with somebody. What you want to do is just show them the better path. And not to convert them, because when they get on the idea of thinking that nirvana is everywhere and can be achieved in different areas, then they will find their own path. And it won't be the same as yours. You may have a path for, especially when we're talking about loved ones, when we think, oh man, I wish this for them and that for them. Well, that's your dream. That's not their dream. And so they have to make up their own dream and what they think that they want out of life. And if they decide sitting on a couch all day and doing nothing is what they want out of life, then that's what they're probably going to get out of life. But there's more out of life than that for most of us, for all of us, if we choose to. But we have to answer where nirvana is. And nirvana is the same as the Christ. It's within you. And if you recognize the Christ, then you will recognize that, as Jesus said, it is within you. It's not outside of you. And we have to keep that fire burning inside of us. This is from the Revealing Word. Greatest in God's kingdom, Fillmore says, when Jesus washed the feet of his apostles, he brought home to his followers that he who willingly performs lowly, humble service for others with no thought of personal distinction is greatest in God's kingdom. And I even find now, when I read this to myself again, that even him writing it is something. When you consider yourself performing lowly, humble service for others, but if you're actually in this, no thought of personal distinction, what you're doing isn't lowly and humble service to others. Do you follow me? It's just a service to another human being.
Absolutely.
I was thinking, and I probably should go here. But I'm going to go here because I don't want to get political, and I'm not trying to get political. We have this thing about the migrants coming here going on. It's been going on for a little bit now. And, people say they're open. Some people say they're open to it and willing to it, yet they probably don't open their doors to one or two or a family. And other people may say, well, we don't want that, we don't want this. And, we have to learn a way to be aware that the Christ in them is the same as the Christ in me, and be able to figure out a way to be humane and help people when we can, although we can't go to a point where we help so many people that we go down with the ship.
Right.
Do you follow me?
Absolutely.
So I don't want anybody to feel bad about anything. I don't know how many people go into Atlanta, probably all of us at some point, and there's quite a few people, just because it's the size of the city it is, there's quite a few people asking for handouts at some stop signs. And I don't know if you have enough money, food that you carry around with you that you're able to hand it out to everybody and feel good about yourself, but most people don't. Most people cannot afford to do that. They go down with the ship. So when you do or don't help somebody out, don't feel bad about it, is what I'm saying. Because we have to understand that the Christ in us can only help as many as we can. So, Jesus had many times to help people in the Bible. Yet, did he help? When you think about Jesus, in the Bible at least, you think, well, he helped everybody he could. Well, that's not true. He didn't help everybody he could because he knew some people weren't willing to receive help. And if you're not willing to receive help, how much is my efforts to help you going to help you? Zero.
That's right. No.
Zero. And that's what separates, I believe, unity from what a lot of people think about Christianity, is that unity is a place where you can come and learn what? How to help yourself. That you have the Christ within you, that you are unlimited. You are the source. Not anything out here, not somebody else, but you are the source. When I left Unity, we had I don't like bringing her up. Okay, we had someone in Unity somewhere that was in charge, had come from the business world, and the business world only. Well, Unity is what? It's a religious organization, isn't it? And you have to, and Fillmore would always say, when he had meetings with everybody in the early goings of Unity, and the financial outlook wasn't the best as it could be, the accountant would come in and say exactly where everybody was out at. And then when he was done with it, the accountant was done with his presentation, Fillmore would say, well, that's where what our accountant says that we are financially. What do you say we are at spiritually? And you have to look at it differently. And Reverend Francie, I can't remember the reference. Oh, yeah, in her song earlier, I think it was. It was in her song. Charles Myrtle. Myrtle was famous for saying this on those types of situations. She wasn't in those board meetings all the time, but she would always say this. I'm not concerned about whether our money holds out. What I'm concerned about is if our faith holds out. Because you cannot have an unlimited source unless you're faithful to the limited source. Yeah. The unlimited source isn't your employer. I'm glad that it used to be really nice when, our parents and our grandparents would go work for somebody for 40 years and then retire, right? Right. But if you look at the landscape for a long time now, it is not that way. If you don't continue to learn and shift and all this stuff for a company, you're out, whether you want to or not. And it's not, so we have to recognize that our source isn't coming from out here. It's coming from within here. And when I feel like I am worth something, then I can be worth something to someone else. You follow me? Okay. Our greatness, and that's what I was talking about, our greatness is within us. It isn't without us, or with outside of us. Let me put it that way. It isn't without us either, but it isn't outside of us. Our greatness is within us because you have the Christ Spirit within you. You have a direct connection to God. And if you have that direct connection to God, then you are unlimited in every way. You are unlimited in one of the most important ways, which is ideas. And when you are unlimited in ideas, you can shape that into something. You can manifest that into something. And so it's up to you whether you do that. Recognize, though, that is where we need to turn when we have any type of situation in life, within. When we reach for the next height, we are enlivening the Christ within us. And that's true. So instead of going to where you think you're going to be, like this church that we bought. Well, what if we go there and we ended up growing so much? Or excuse me, let me rephrase that. When we go there and we grow so much to where we're full, are we going to stay there? Well, we can't if we do that. Okay, we have to either add on or move up somewhere. And so that's what we need to continue to know, that we're not going, and it's not about me or Francie, Reverend Francie. it's the church growing. What it's about is us all taking our individual responsibility and our greatness and expressing it and sharing it with others when we can. Not to proselytize, but to recognize the Christ within them can be expressed to improve their own situation. The next height does not have to be something we achieve ourselves. And that could go right to the church if we're thinking about that. We can obviously the church will have to take everybody to grow it. And so that is, as a group, that's how we do it. But also, when we are going to our next height, we can go as far as an individual can go on to the next height with, say, our partner or with someone else that we have in our life. We don't have to be the impetus all the time. We have to recognize, though, what to do. Reverend Francie was talking or listening to something, and I overheard it. She likes to watch reels, and she was watching something, I think it was yesterday, about Cher's. Cher was talking about her, Cher the singer. Yeah. She was talking about what's happened, some of the things that have happened in her life. And I think it was the song, Can You Love After Love? What was it called?
Do you believe?
Do you believe?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Believe,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, do you believe in love after love? That's the line that goes on throughout. Yeah. And she was saying about how, she helped write that song, and that she didn't put her name on it, and she lost out on millions of dollars because she didn't put her name on it, because the writers got a lot of money. And so that is what I'm saying. Sometimes we participate in things and we don't recognize what our worth in that was. And we find out later. And that's okay. I mean, she's obviously not hurting. Yet she pointed that out for us to recognize that we are always able to grow, and we don't have to be the impetus behind it all the time. But we do have to do what? We have to participate in life. And so when we participate, when we put in our 2 cents worth, and we can grow with whatever's coming from that. Ambrosia in each one of us is growing in our Christ awareness and demonstrating it. So ambrosia, and there's many different definitions of it. What's that? What's that?
It's a salad.
It's a salad. She said it's a salad. That's true. It's also a musical group. But anyway, there's definitions behind it. And the definition that I always like to refer to when I'm talking about ambrosia is nectar of the gods. So, in other words, food for the gods, sweetness for the gods. And so and that's why I used it here. Sweetness for the gods is when each one of us is growing our Christ awareness and demonstrating it. And see, that's what gives us life. Because what's inside of us is what gives us life, right? If we've all seen in this church many miracle healings of people who have been given a death sentence by the medical community, yet have lived many years afterwards, because they recognize that if I pray for my own self-health and other people are even praying with me, then how can I be stopped but be healthy? That's what we're going to do for you, Pecola. That's what we're going to do for anybody who's asking for prayer and open to receive it. So when we do that, we understand that can heal our body, then we can recognize how, as long as we recognize that that's the Christ within us doing the healing, then we can do anything in our life other than just healing too. But we have to recognize it and use it. And when we feel like we need it, ask for help. That's what we're here for. We're a family. You are extraordinary and are blessed to live an extraordinary life. And that's what you have to recognize. You're not ordinary. You're not here to live an ordinary life. And if you just, mosey on around and don't do anything to live an extraordinary life, I suppose you can achieve that. But when you recognize the Christ within you, you are called upon to rise higher than the ordinary life. You're called upon to live an extraordinary life. And you are blessed beyond measure to do that. And it has nothing to do with me, although I'll do it if you want to, me giving you whatever blessing you want. I'll be glad to do it, and it's a good ritual sometimes, but it's not that. I think the washing of the feet is really kind of cool. We did that once here, well, at the other church.
We did one.
Our universe rejoices when you are living your best Christ life, the extraordinary life, and that's true. Can you believe that, though? Because the universe does. It's funny, and I think, when you look at things, when you think about, you can go along life driving your car and see all the cars and all this and never recognize anyone really over the other. Yet when you start thinking of a red car, what do you see? A bunch of red cars. I never knew there were so many red cars out there. Have you noticed all the red cars? And if you say that to somebody else, what are they going to notice? They're going to notice red cars, aren't they?
Yeah, we're all going to notice on the way home.
Yeah, okay, white, whatever you want to switch it to. But if you do that in a spiritual sense, it's the same thing. And that's what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
If you do that in the spiritual sense, look at all my blessings that I have in life. Look at all the blessings I have in life. And then you'll start recognizing even more that were probably always there, but you haven't recognized them and taken rejoicing in them. So we can do this at any time. And I'm asking you today to do that. Can you do that for at least a week?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. And if we can do that, then let's go to the song. Amen.
Amen.